Welcome back to Chapter 18, Part 2, Renaissance in Northern Europe. Let's start with Hans Holbein the Younger. This is known as the Ambassadors, Jean de Dintville and George de Selve. Hans Holbein the Younger. He trained under his father, Hans Holbein the Elder, in Augsburg, Germany. He became court painter to King Henry VIII. This particular piece is a painting of two ambassadors from France to the English court, Jean de Dintville and George de Selve. This painting is 81 by 85 inches, so we're talking about a little under 7 foot by 7 foot painting to give you an idea of the scale. Now, there is a lot of information hidden in this piece, very much in that Northern European style. So let's start breaking this down. A little bit background of this painting. So these ambassadors were from France to the English court, but they're very concerned about something that is happening in 1533, the year of this painting. And that is Henry VIII has married Anne Boleyn on January 25th, 1533. He had his marriage to Catherine, his first wife, annulled May 23rd, 1533. And in between there is a very important date, April 11th, 1533. That is when England officially broke with the Catholic Church and created the Anglican Church, otherwise known as the Church of England. So these two ambassadors, they actually were friends in real life. So let's talk about Jean de Dintville first. So he is in the fur-lined tunic over the velvet garment. We've got that chain over his neck, go right there, with a medal. This is identifying him as a member of the Order of St. Michael, which is a French chivalric order. He was sent to Henry's court by the French King Francis I, and he's 29 years old at the date of this painting. And this is confirmed by the date being on his dagger there. So we have that he is 29 written on the dagger. Let's talk about George. He is in a cleric collar, as you'll see. He's also covered in this very warm, furry gown, and his arm is resting on a Bible. So he is a Roman Catholic Bishop of Navarre and ambassador to the Holy Roman Emperor, the Vatican, and Venice. And he is 25 years old, and his date is actually written on the. So let's go into some of the details of the piece. So zooming in, here is that Bible, and there's his age here, the 25. We have some sundials and other instruments of telling time and date and things like that here. And it actually shows April 11th, 1533. Again, this is when England broke with the church. Some of these instruments track constellations, and we have some globes also in the scene. The lute, you will notice, has a broken string there. It's popped up. So we have the idea of discord happening. The hymnal that is right in front of the lute, right here, this is a Lutheran hymnal, and it's a hymn translated into German by Martin Luther. And the hymn shown is Come Holy Spirit, and it's all about coming together. The idea behind this is that we can all come together even though we have these differences of opinion and things that are happening in the world. Here is a detail of the St. Michael pendant that John is wearing, and these are the two globes. We have a globe of the constellation, so a celestial globe and a terrestrial globe. And the terrestrial globe is actually focused in on Jean's hometown. Also, in the corner, you might have noticed something peeking out from the curtains, and that is this crucifix. Now to zoom in on the bottom, you might have noticed that there was something kind of odd about the bottom, an anamorphic representation of a skull. Now this is only truly readable from an acute angle. If it is viewed around 6.5 feet to the right at eye level with the ambassador's skull, is easily read. Now, the skull is a symbol of vanitas, the idea that vanity and life is fleeting. The skull is also Dinteville's personal symbol. This extreme angle of the skull, this extreme perspective, was actually something that Leonardo da Vinci had worked with. It is also considered a memento mori, a reminder that we all eventually die. You can actually see that skull in that extreme angle. And the mosaic on the floor, you'll see a very intricate design. That is the same as the sanctuary of Westminster Abbey. Here's another piece by Hans Holbein the Younger. This is King Henry VIII. So this is probably the one that you are most likely to have seen of King Henry. This is the height of his power, 1540. Henry VIII had ruled from 1509, and then he will end up dying in 1547. At this point in time, he's about 50 years old. He weighs over 400 pounds with a 54-inch waist. And this is the kind of man that we're used to seeing for King Henry VIII. The thing is, this is not how he started out. When he was a young man in his 20s, he was 6'1", had a 32-inch waist, and a 39-inch chest, and that was because he was a very fit and active man. He was jousting, playing tennis on a daily basis. He was extremely active and fit. Now you say, how did he get from point A to point B? Well, a couple of reasons. One, he's king, so he has access to all the best foods, all the richest foods, all the sugar and fats, and the amount of food that he ever would want. He has everything he might ever want. The other thing is that there was an accident. In 1536, he is 44 years old, and he has a jousting accident. So he is knocked unconscious. Now, this is kind of the beginning of a lot of problems. So this jousting accident, not only was he unconscious for, some say, up to 2 hours, but he also severely injured his leg, an injury that would plague him for the rest of his life. After he finally came to, after this accident, many of the courtiers remarked about the changes in his personality. So some of the extreme measures that he took with his many wives, of beheading them, of pursuing them, we have a lot of this that could have been due to the brain damage that he suffered during this accident. As I said, he had a leg injury that never fully healed. So he was never able to be a fit and active man again. So he wasn't able to play tennis or joust or do any of those things. So he's sitting there eating these rich and sweet foods. And this is what the ultimate result of that is. This piece even accentuates, emphasizes the massiveness of Henry VIII. Why? This is a piece of propaganda. This is to show that Henry VIII is someone not to be messed with, that you want to be careful when you are dealing with him. So Hans Holbein the Younger portrays him as this massive, strong man because of this, to show his physical strength, his physical massiveness, to also allude to his massive control, his power over this vast kingdom. So in one hand, he's holding his gloves, but the other is resting on a dagger. So again, the idea that he could kill at any moment. This is a portrait of Elizabeth I, Henry VIII's daughter. This is by Marcus Gerhardt the Younger. This is also referred to as the Ditchley portrait. Elizabeth ruled from 1558 to 1603. This is also a piece of propaganda. It is showing that she is physically over the world, over for the Kingdom of England. We also see that we have a split in the sky from blue sky with clouds to one of storms. This is probably a reference to the defeat of the Spanish Armada in 1588. Now, Queen Elizabeth had become queen at the age of 20. And you have to remember how she became queen. There was a lot of political turmoil that had happened before she became queen, with her half-sister, Mary Queen of Scots, with her younger brother who had passed away. And so this is a queen who is craving stability and peace and calm. Her childhood was anything but that. Remember, Henry VIII killed her mother. So this is a queen that is craving that stability. We see that in a lot of her depictions, that she is this stable but powerful monarch. Now, you will remember that she never married. This is partially to keep the power, because she is a woman ruling in a very male-dominated world. So the idea, if she married, that her husband would become king and have the power. This way she was able to keep the power, but that did mean the Tudor line died with her. While this portrait is somewhat stylized, this does reflect the style of the day. The poofy skirt with the hoops and the small waist and the very white face. Yes, that was created by using lead-based makeup. You'll also notice the high forehead. That was popular in this day to pluck your eyebrows and pluck the hairline farther back. Some of these seem a bit crazy to us, but I'm sure that they would think some of our fashion is crazy as well. The other thing to remember is that Elizabeth never really saw many women grow old around her. Her father made sure that they were either dead or gone when they got older. So we have a woman with a lot of issues there. So this piece is a propaganda piece showing the rule and the might of Queen Elizabeth, that she has vanquished the Spanish fleet in 1588. She's standing on a map of her realm. The writing to the right is a sonnet about her grace, and this was commissioned by Sir Henry Lee. She is wearing white, which represents the virginity. Remember, she is called the Virgin Queen because she never took a husband. Whether she was a virgin or not, that we will never know. She is 59 years old in this portrait. Now, let's move to the Netherlands. This is Gerard David's Virgin Among Virgins. So we have the Virgin Mary holding the Christ child surrounded by saints. But in this case, everyone is female. Now, you will notice that most of the faces do look remarkably similar, but the attributes, the things that they're holding or with, are going to differentiate and tell us who all these individuals are. Now, the interesting thing about the Netherlands, before we get into this piece, is that the northern Netherlands, what is modern-day Holland, that was a Protestant area. The southern Netherlands, what is today Belgium, was Catholic. So we've got the north with Amsterdam being much more Protestant and the south with Brugge being much more Catholic. So that will be something we're going to talk about later. Okay, you will notice that there is one man in this piece, and he kind of sticks out, he and his wife. Those are right here. That gentleman there is the one who commissioned this piece. That is David, and there is his wife on the far right, Cornelia Knoop. They are in the upper corners. This was created for a Carmelite nunnery. So we've got the Virgin and Child here in the center. The Christ child is holding a bunch of grapes. This is a symbol of the Eucharist. Every single woman portrayed here is a saint. And so We can go through a couple of these. So the woman with the basket is Dorothy, basket of roses. We've got Catherine near in front of her. Here we go. There's Catherine. And we know that because of the wheel, but in this case, the wheel is on her crown. We've got that wheel, the method of her torture. We have Agnes with the lamb at her feet, and that's because she was killed at 14 because she refused to marry a pagan. We have Barbara over here, and on her headdress we have a tower, and that's because her father locked her away in a tower. And then we have Lucy in this far corner. There we go. Lucy in the far corner. And she's holding some eyes because her eyes were gouged out. Now, all the women are saints, and we can go through every single one of them. But that's just a handful to show you a few of the saints depicted in this piece. This is by Jan Gossart. This is for Philip of Burgundy. These are nudes based on Durer's Adam and Eve, but we have much more bulky proportions. Architecture looks like it is influenced by Bramante and other more ancient temples. So we have Neptune or Poseidon, the god of the sea, and Amphitrite, the wife of Poseidon or Neptune. This is the Penitence of St. Jerome by Joachim Patinier. This is a triptych. St. Jerome is in the wilderness. They are in the center. We have John the Baptist there on the left, baptizing Christ. And on the right, we have St. Anthony Abbot. Remember, he's the one that we saw in the earlier piece, Eisenheim altarpiece, with the demon coming in the window. And remember, he's the one that is invoked for the various like stomach ailments and things like that. So in the background, you'll notice that we have some more contemporary architecture. We have this vast background that links all three of these biblical images that creates this very vast scope, including, it looks like, God over here having these rays coming down onto this baptismal scene. Here's Pieter Artenson's The Meat Stall. Now in this, we actually have inverted perspective. What does that mean? What that means, the most important thing is in the background and the least important is here in the foreground. So the foreground, we have all these meats. Might not be the most enticing for us, but we've got various cuts of meat and sausages ready for to be taken home to be eaten. In this midground, you have this gentleman who is dumping all these oysters. Well, oysters were considered to be an aphrodisiac. So we have this pub behind him. We have him dumping these oyster shells. So the idea is kind of the worldliness that's happening. And then in the background, and again, that's the most important, is that very background. Well, we have the Virgin and Child in flight to Egypt. So we see the Virgin Child there on the donkey. And then we see this line of people, and they're lined up to go to church. But you'll notice they're actually ignoring the Virgin and Child. They're ignoring what is important right in front of them. They're not helping. They're actually just so focused on the outward display of going to church. So it's very much a commentary there. The upper right, the little sign that you see, this is saying that there is a farm for sale. You'll also notice that there's lots of things that ends up being crosses. Fishes are like a cross and things like that. There's lots of subtle hints in this piece. Now we're going to go to Peter Bruegel the Elder. This is Return of the Hunters. Now, Peter Bruegel the Elder, he was born near Hertengabosch. That sounds vaguely familiar. That was the home of Hieronymus Bosch. Now, he was a highly educated, well-to-do man. He visited Italy, but he was fascinated with the common man and their plight. And so that's what the most common subject matter is. These ordinary people going about their daily life. So the idea is that this is a village We've got the hunters coming back with their dogs and a couple animals strung up, and we've got just life happening. We have maybe some kids and people playing on the frozen lake over there. We've got some women building a fire. We have just ordinary life. Peter Bruegel the Elder has had some criticism saying that his depiction of these peasants, these common man, ordinary man, are caricatures created to entertain the wealthy. But others suggest that his paintings are a celebration of this common man. Here's his peasant wedding. So we see again a large group of ordinary people getting together, and you see them eating and enjoying this happy occasion of this wedding. We also see a lot of details in his works, again, Northern European. So we have lots and lots of detail ranging from the food to the clothing. You notice that we do have bright colors here. And everyone seems to be happy. He doesn't portray them as dirty or lowly. He portrays them as happily going about their business. But you do notice that the only food that's being served is a porridge. So they're not having this grand banquet like we might be used to seeing in some of the Italian paintings of these kings and queens and nobility. And this is Peter Bruegel the Elder's The Blind Leading the Blind. This is based on Matthew 15:12 through 19. Many of his paintings are based on biblical proverbs. In this painting, he uses this strong diagonal to underscore this instability of these men who are stumbling. The idea is that if you have the blind leading the blind, then they all are going to fall and end up on the ground. Interestingly enough, modern eye doctors have looked at this, and from the way that Peter Bruegel has depicted each of these individual men, they say that each individual man suffers from a different eye affliction. So one might have cataracts, one might have something else. This is actually one of his last paintings before he passed.